Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Mostly Andrew, since I think you're the only one here so far. How's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. It's been a busy few months.
Oh my goodness. It's been insane. Yeah. It's been an insane few months. Do you feel like now that the holidays are over, you're finding any sort of little like calm down, or is it still pretty crazy?
Not at all. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that does kind of tend to like pull through January oftentimes.
It can. Yeah. I'm trying to get my edge back on to start writing. And I've got a project I got to start recording for somebody very soon.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Hello, Anita. We see you.
Quick before she says we're ignoring her. Well, since there's a few people in the chat.
We have an audience now. That's right.
Yeah. Hey, friends. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Tori. And no, Anita. I'm sorry. You can come back in 10 minutes, though. I'm Tori, and I have with me this evening for our 35th episode of Motley Crew Chats, regular on the channel at this point. I feel like that's safe to say. You've been on here quite a few times. Couple. Andrew D. Meredith, fellow epic fantasy author and cozy, well, not fellow, but he's also a cozy fantasy author. And
you're not.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Yet.
I'm going to get you.
Yeah, eventually. Yeah. Andrew, do you want to tell everybody a little bit? Because nobody knows who you are. Because, you know, I never talk about you or your work ever on the channel.
Not at all.
So do you want to tell everyone about the books behind you?
Okay. So I am Andrew D. Meredith. And because there was another Andrew Meredith or three. Anyway, there's a few of us. I am the author of epic fantasy series, The Collation Saga, which you can see here. Book 1 is A Deathless Beast, and then goes through Bone Shroud, Gloves of Eons, and now out is Dread Knight, which is book 4 and the end of the first
That
arc.
Is my favorite cover. That is so cool.
I'm so happy with it. And there's a lot of fun things hidden in there too. Not just spoilers, but like personal story stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's my big epic fantasy series. It's got everything you could want in a classic epic. It's a little bit slow burn. There's no info dumping. I'm kind of become known for not info dumping, but still a lot of world building about paladins, mercenaries, dark figure who wants to kill the gods, as one does in a fantasy, and a lot of political and religious intrigue. Yeah, but my first series that I published is Thrice, starts with Thrice, which is the Needle and Leaf series. I have 2 books out, and I'm working on the 3rd right now. So this is a Slavic fantasy, inspired by Slavic mythology about a father and son on the road. Little boy has way too much magic. Father takes him on the road to ask those that are chasing them to stop really nicely, and then hijinks ensue. And there's 2 books in that series, Thrice and Fourscored.
Mm-hmm.
And then my new series is my cozy fantasy. So I was already kind of known as a comfy fantasy author.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Wizard and Nico coined me as a comfy fantasy author.
Yeah.
Because it's a comfort read, but not necessarily cozy. This is cozy. Through and through. Think All Creatures Great and Small meets D&D. Quaint Creatures, Magical and Mundane is about a giant, Rick Norick Softstep, who used to be a dungeon inspector and now runs a magical pet shop and veterinary clinic for magical animals.
And it has gotten the stamp of approval from me and my 12-year-old son.
Yes, so. Excellent. Yes, and that one and Thrice are both SBFBO semifinalists in different years.
Flex.
Yeah.
Hey, John. Welcome. Matt's here. Hello. Kayla is here, one of our favorite humans. That's right. We're just here to take up all of your weeknight evenings. Hi, Ryan. Britton's here. Hey, Britton. Hi, Rod. And Brian from Belltube is here.
Yes. Everybody's here. Yeah.
Everybody's here.
Yep,
everybody who's anybody. Derek. Hi,
Janny's
Derek.
here. Hello, Janny.
Hi, Janny.
I have been very busy. Brand new covers for the Collation Saga for the Kickstarter I ran a few months ago. And
who did the covers, Andrew?
I actually did them. I did them myself this time. I took the time to break out my college art degree and spent time kind of nailing down and making them look how I actually, it's very close to what I originally wanted back in like 2017, 2018. So it was good to get back to the roots and do it well. So yeah.
Kayla says not to forget the bread.
And I actually, as I got on the camera, Tori saw me shoving a piece in my mouth. I was trying to get some before we started. Just made my first French bread.
Yes, Andrew is one of the fantasy authors that you can tell when reading his work that he likes to cook and bake, because he's very good at the food descriptions, which we all love.
Yeah. And the beer descriptions too, I'll point out. If you like beer, I know my beer, and I try to emulate that for you beer drinkers as well. I don't drink as much as I used to, but still, I know my beer well enough that it's not just, and they drank an ale. It was like chewing on grain. Like, that's not beer. It never has been. So I take that pretty seriously too.
If you want just your basic run-of-the-mill ale, read my book.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm not a beer drinker at all. So, but wine.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Wine and meat are great too.
Yeah. So if you purchase one of these books, it will not come with the words printed backwards. I promise.
That happened to somebody?
No, I think because you're mirrored on your camera. So everything looks backwards.
Do I need to flip it?
That's totally up to you. I'm not bothered, but everyone else cannot read.
Backwards.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can fix that. Tell us what
this is a professional show, Andrew. Come on now. There you go.
Ding.
There we go. Pete is here. So this is a completely unscripted chat tonight, you guys. Andrew and I never find anything to talk about, so I'm sure it's going to be really hard to fill an hour or two of time. But we wanted to talk a little bit about our writing careers and books in general, and whatever comes up. Feel free to drop questions or comments in the chat as we go if you want us to swerve into any specific topic. Brian wants to know if you have ever read any Kevin Hearn.
I have not, but I know of him, and I know we have very similar beards.
I mean, I feel like that's a reason to read it.
He wrote for Star Wars, or still does
write
for Star Wars. He writes several.
I have his. Is it Plague of Giants? Something like that. Something of Giants. Yeah, I have that on my shelf. Yeah. Anitha would like to know why both of your main characters start with the letter J.
Yeah, I have no idea. So, like, Jinnid was not. He was never a main character. He was a supporting character, and it just grew into what he is now. Whereas Joven was, and yes, I know it probably should be pronounced Joven, but too late now. So I don't know. And actually, I've had to be careful not to do it again. So now I'm like, I'll start coming up with new names for main characters. I'm like, ooh, this is a good name. Like, it's another J name, Andrew. Stop it. So I got to be real careful. I don't know why.
I feel like every author has a letter that they, like, for me, it's S. I have to be very careful that I don't overuse S names because.
Right. Well, like George Lucas loves his double O's, his ooze, like everything Tatooine, everything has an oo in it, Pantapudu, and he loves his ooze for that's his sound. And maybe J is just mine. I don't know. It's funny though, because if I had to like pick a letter, my favorite letter is probably like R.
Yeah, R's a good letter.
Not J, but yeah.
V's pretty great too. I like V.
Yeah.
Daniel has made his own beer, so he will be quite critical.
Excellent. If you ever you're reading along and you're like, what style of beer is this supposed to be? Take a guess and then DM me and I'll tell you, because it's probably it's very likely it's very specific style. Hey, Mads. All right, Anitha's got a tough question for you. Jinnid versus Joven. Save one, drop one. Jinnid. Yeah. Jinnid's pretty great. Yeah, I mean, we've discussed in the past that, like, you can't help having some parts of your personality come through in certain characters. And Joven and Jinnid are very similar in personality, except that Jinnid is much more stoic than Joven is much more stoic than Jinnid. Yep. And and he's a little, even though they're probably about the same age, he's a little bit older in that he's learning to I don't know. He has more of an older edge to his anger versus Jinnid rarely gives in, but he thinks it a lot.
Yeah.
He has a lot
of intrusive thoughts.
He has a lot more intrusive thoughts than Joven
Yeah.
does, whereas Joven
Yeah.
just reacts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More impulsive. That makes sense.
Yeah, but Jinnid is who I would much more wish to aspire to be.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting question, because we get asked as authors all the time who our favorite character is to write. But I think I actually like the idea of asking authors instead, which of your characters do you most aspire to be like?
Yeah.
Because I think that would be a very interesting question.
And, you know, in the end, they have totally different walks of life. Like Joven is a father, and Jinnid will never be a father. And I don't plan on introducing characters that he can father. But that doesn't mean he won't mentor older, young men. But I don't intend to have him have. That's not the story. That he's
parental role.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Evie just ran into someone at work who's a writer working on a fantasy romance and written a dystopian fantasy, and she hasn't pursued. It's so cool when you randomly run into people in your circles. Like I remember I did a book fair at my alma mater a couple years ago, and somebody that I went through 4 years of college with, and we were kind of like aware of each other, one of those things, but we weren't ever in the same friend group. He came up to me at the table and he was like, "Oh my gosh, you write fantasy?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, I read all sorts of fantasy. And he was listing off authors that I know. And I was like, "Dude," I was like, "Are you on BookTube at all?" And he was like, "No, do you know any channels I can follow?" I was like, "How long do you have?" Let me write you a dissertation on that.
Yes.
But that was it was very cool.
But follow Tori first.
Well, yeah, obviously. Yes. I gave him mine and also a bunch of others. So Evie, along with that, would like to know if we have any advice for writers that haven't published yet but want to pursue it. Oof, that's a can of worms.
Yeah. Do your research and ask for help. Yeah. Because if they are not on social media, the algorithm is going to hide you no matter what you're doing, whether that's going into you're pursuing traditional publishing or just asking traditional published authors what to do versus asking indies what they've done. It's going to hide you until the algorithm finds you. Right. But just asking an author, they might be too busy, but they might know somebody else who can answer. "Hey, oh, sorry, I'm busy. Go ask Tori, go ask Andrew, go ask, anybody online." And that will then allow the algorithm to help you find other authors that are in that same theme, and have an open mind. We're in such a different era now of trad versus indie that, and you're going to get things from both sides. They're going to have indies saying, "Don't ever go trad. That's awful. Oh, don't sell out." And trads will say, "Oh, don't sell yourself. Don't go over to indie." But there's also going to be those who do hybrid and crossover, and finding those and just taking that whole open mind and realizing that in the end, it is just an industry. And treat it as such, as opposed to don't let the glamour hit your eyes and you just walk in blindly into one of them and hope it works well. It will not. You
take
have
your
to
time.
Be smart. Yeah.
Take your time to research what's going to work best for you. And also kind of piggybacking off what Andrew said, the village first. Because I know, like, coming into the community in 2022, knowing absolutely nobody and wanting to publish an epic fantasy. And I was just like, and meeting authors like Andrew and others who were like, "Hey, welcome to the indie space. Here's where we start. Like, meet these people, go to these Discords or whatever." And forging those friendships and relationships, because you're kind of building a group of people around yourself that eventually may become your alpha readers, your beta readers, the people that want the ARC copies, or at least are willing to help you with like cover reveals, or like you're kind of building your village as you meet people and forge those relationships. And the relationships are really what make the experience, in my opinion.
Right. And I guess the other advice I would give, and this is advice that I have done for myself, so that does not mean you should do it, which is true of all writing advice. If your book is done and you are now shopping it, whether to trad or you are making the road towards your first indie publication, and you're still asking lots of questions on how to do all the steps, start another project, an unrelated project, so that you have creativity that's still coming out. And it could be you're thinking, well, I'll want to start writing book 2 of the series. It's like, okay, but there's 2 problems with that. One is if you're going trad, they're going to make you wait to work on that next one, probably a little bit, and get some input. If you're going indie, you could work on that second one. I get that. But if you have a separate project, it'll let your brain kind of let that one go. You'll feel a little less disappointment when you hit the query trenches and they're turning you down because you're working on a separate project.
Right.
And it also sets you up for success later because like in trad, if you have a book that's coming out and it's not coming out for 2 years, they might ask you not to write anything else because they're not going to publish it until that one's out and has proved itself. But if you've already got a second book going, then when the agent says, I'm going to start pitching this around, and you're like, but the second book I'm still working on, and I might decide to go indie with that, the agent will say, great, let me see it first so I can have first dibs. But then you can start going hybrid right away. So it gives you a chance to split your market in a more advantageous way. So I would say start a second project, if only to be in the act of creating. Yes. That's the main thing. Is
don't let that go stagnant, for sure.
No, you don't want 3 years between writing and waiting for a book to come out to be given the green light. You don't need anybody's permission. Just write another book. Write short stories and submit to short story competitions, anthologies, whatever, and get involved in the community. Because just having 2 different projects, I mean, it can get a stretch. I'm hitting a point now where I'm feeling pulled in 4 different directions, and I'm trying to close things off so I can do things other things I want to work on.
Yep.
But which is hard. But you know what? Writing's hard no matter what you do.
Yeah. The other thing I would say as a piece of advice for new writers is to give yourself a lot of grace, because I think a lot of new writers, they're so excited and they have so much enthusiasm, and that's awesome. And we need that it kind of breathes life into the community whenever that happens, which is amazing. But also, like, coming in and just giving yourself a lot of grace, recognizing that your first book might not be like the cat's pajamas, and that's okay. Like, it'll feel like it is when you first write it, but just taking it one day at a time. Don't get super down on yourself if you get, a lower review or somebody doesn't like it. Look at everything as an opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. As long as you have a very healthy understanding of who you are and your weaknesses, and you acknowledge when you're being hard-nosed, that helps.
Yeah.
I was thinking of I'm stubborn. I wrote Collation Saga first and was pitching that, and then when I wrote Thrice. But when I decided to go indie, I published Thrice first so I could do some last changes to Collation Saga before it came out, so it was an improved book, because it was my baby project and I was going to get it published, which goes against that advice of your first work might be crap, and maybe it is compared to what I'm going to write in the future. But then I look at someone like Christopher Rocchio, who said, well, I'm going to fix Dune. And then he got published right out of college. And it's like, some people, just by being stubborn, can really get a lot of things done.
Yeah, it's true. Ryan says that it's devastating not to be the cat's pajamas, but you could be. See, exactly. One thing doesn't work, try something else. I think, and that's one of the reasons why I think you see a lot of indie authors, especially trying different subgenres or completely different genres in general, because I think we're already out of the box. So we're kind of like, do I like this? What if I try something like, I want to try cozy? Oh, no, I don't know if I feel like, well, I want to try like, romantasy, or I want to try grimdark, or I want whatever it is, like trying different things.
Well, I mean, take
great.
Robin Hobb and Jenny Wirtz in the audience, right? Is they wrote for 20 years before they started their big projects that they're on now. Well, finished for Jenny, congratulations. But she had already been publishing since the 70s, and Hobb wrote under her other pseudonym until 1995. So she had books from 79 to 95 that she was trying different things and figuring out who she was.
Yeah.
And that's important. Yes. But what she wrote in the 80s is who she was in the 80s. So it's a good time capsule for who you are.
Giving yourself grace also includes that, right? You're allowing yourself the space to shift and grow and learn and recognize your weaknesses and work on them. Challenge yourself. Like, one of the things that you've told me multiple times when I come to you with a new project is one of the first things you say almost every time is, how are you are you going to challenge yourself? How are you challenging yourself with this?
Yeah.
And I think that's such a good mindset to go into it. Like, okay, what can I try here that I've never done before? What's a complete opposite from the type of character I usually
what's an example of that for you? What's something you've done that you challenged yourself, like in Cold Silver? Don't spoil anything, but
I'm trying to think. Well, Cold Silver was an attempt at writing cozy fantasy that failed.
Successfully, you're filling up.
Yeah, right. I'm trying to think for Cold Silver, something I'd never done before. I mean, I think the setting is a big difference for me because I've never written fantasy Western.
Yep.
But I'm a big fan of Western stories and all of the things that come along with that. And I'm also challenging myself with the first person tense, which is something I always told myself I would never write. So if you ever are like, I will never do this, like at some point you should try it just to see how you feel. And I think the thing with that was I never felt drawn to writing first person, and that was fine. It took the right character. Like as soon as I started writing Cold Silver, I didn't even start writing in third person because I knew that Hunter was an I voice, and I knew that she had a strong enough character voice that I would feel confident writing in it for an entire book, and now potentially an entire series. So that was and it's been hard. This is my first book in a while where it's been really hard. I've hit some snags in this book where I'm like, I don't know what to do with it because it's not third person, and I have to like challenge myself to pull that prose out differently than I do with, because with third person, you can look at an environment and you can describe it however you like. In first person, you have to say, okay, what would this character notice? What would they ignore? What are they going to describe? And what are they not going to describe? And, they're not going to give the reader the same kind of, like, Hunter's not going to be out here giving you flowery descriptions of the prairie. Like, she's just not. She's going to notice, like, who do I need to be aware of? Where am I in my environment in case I get, into a scuffle? She's much more not limited, but she's in a very specific direction with how she's going to be describing her environment, which has been a good challenge for me. So Daniel says, hey, if she wants to drop some spoilers, let's not stand in her way, Andrew. I'm hoping to drop the cover reveal for this very soon, you guys. So I'm getting very close.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. You know what, Anitha? Stay tuned. Because that is a big challenge. This is a big challenge I have for myself, is to write something that is cozy fantasy.
Yeah. Evie had a good question.
I know. I'm going to go back to it in just a second. My mom said, today's best is tomorrow's starting point. Hi, Mom. Everybody give my mom some well wishes. She just had surgery on her broken ankle this morning, which went well.
Now she's a cyborg.
Exactly. Now she's a cyborg with plates and screws and everything. So that's pretty cool. I'll have to write a story inspired by my mom as a cyborg at some point. That would be funny. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go back up because Kay also had a really lovely question, but I think we're going to start with Evie's. A question for purely myself now. Do you ever write just for fun? Now that you have published works, write with no intention to publish?
Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
I have an answer ready.
Go ahead. Yeah.
In my world, because publishing is just such a natural progression for me, I don't know that I start with the intent to publish, but it's always kind of there. But I would say pretty much every project I start is for fun because I write for myself first and my audience second. And sometimes I just open a Word document and play. I've written the beginnings of 5 stories in the last year, and some of them I may pick back up and keep going. Some of them I might not. But it's fun to just lay everything down for a little bit, especially if you're in a creative rut, and just open a Word document and try something different and see what you come up with.
Yeah. I would say very much the same. I mean, I do write in order to publish.
Sure.
Because my goal is to complete the project. So I don't write.
Well, it's also a career for us.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't just write just to draft and say I drafted good enough. I'm trying to get better at actually producing a finished product, and not out of the gate, but working towards that. So anything I say to end on is going to get published eventually. It just may take time for it to be to reach that point for editing. But I absolutely write for fun. Quaint Creatures is a great example of that. Is I thought about writing a cozy for 2 years, and finally I was watching All Creatures Great and Small and said, that's what I'm going to do.
That's what
I wrote it in 30 days. Just blew it out of the water. And I'll never do it again that fast, but it happened. And it was a great experience, and I was able, and it just was too smooth. But on the flip side, I will continue to write my Hrogran Templar stories, even though so far nobody really loves them. Because they are for me, and when I publish them as short stories, they're for me. And as I gain fans, I may very well have those who want to read it, and that's cool. But it really is for me more than the fans. So that one's definitely.
I think with that too, I mean, I read 2 novellas this last year by authors who have done really well in indie publishing, and going back, I would have waited to read those shorter fiction pieces until after reading their main body of work, because I think it's a little bit hard with a short story when you're introducing an entirely new world with a lot of new concepts and creatures and all that kind of stuff. It is more of a challenge that you're giving to your readers, where you're like, when like, so for now, I read the Hrogran story, and having read Collation to some extent already, I appreciated what I was seeing a lot more, because I had that grounding in that world.
Yeah. But it is very alien, and that was a challenge for me. Is how do I write a set of short stories where there's no humans,
which is awesome,
and make it enjoyable as a cultural exploration for myself.
Also, Evie, that was definitely not a dumb question at all.
No.
We're going to get to Kay. We're going to get to your question, I promise, because it's going to lead into a very large discussion. So I want to just make sure. Janny says, was gaining life experience and depth of craft to do the big one. Yeah, I think that's a big thing too, is every story we write teaches us something new, and it puts something else in the toolbox for when we move forward to the next project. And I know that, I had to write Phased before I could write Bloodstones. And I know I would not have been ready for that without the stepping stone that was Phased. And Bloodstones is going to, create a stepping stone, hopefully, for something else. So,
and as much as younger people, and in the end, we're kind of all younger than somebody, don't want to hear it, life experience is so important. I mean, I think back to when I was a, dumb high school student, homeschooler, going to classes for improv to try to learn comedy. And it's like, sorry, you can't. You can learn comedy. It takes work, but it requires life experience to understand the why of comedy, as opposed to the technical means.
Why is that funny?
Yeah, anybody can do a pratfall, but to really know why something's funny, it's why a lot of the best comedians have very, very dark pasts, because they've gone through a lot of life experience and have come out the other end with a healthy irony for it. And that's true. It's true of writing. I mean, there's people who come out, out of the womb geniuses, and good for them. They might be genius mentally. Are they street smart? Do they have social wisdom? Who knows? I'm watching Young Sheldon right now, and it's hilarious to see young Sheldon and his sister, who's dumb as a brick, but is also incredibly wise socially. And it's just a great back and forth. But life experience is so important, and acknowledging that and deciding what is your career path. Do you want to gain life experience as you go and just get writing? You can do that. Do you want to plan and then never publish because you never feel ready? Well, you have to decide. If you're
how badly do you want to do this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can sit in analysis paralysis forever and never get anywhere, or you can just do it and then learn as you ride.
Well, and that's the thing too. And I don't know if it's like this it's going to be different for everybody, obviously, but for me, writing is the thing that is my thing. Like ever since I was very young, I bounce around to a lot of different hobbies. I have a very short attention span when it comes to that. Writing has been a solid thread through 33 years of my life since I was a little kid building epic fantasy Lego kingdoms in my playroom. And I've always gone back to that. it's like the thing that you can't get away from, that you going back over and over and over again, that just feels like it's infused in your DNA. I don't know that I could do anything else for a long period of time. And this is what I want to do with my life, is in terms of a career. Like this is, I've tried other things and I'm just like, this is it. You know, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. And, you know, it takes those knocks to realize which art you'll be least offended with critiques. And, and I learned that the hard way. You know, in art, I went and got my degree in art, and then at a Comic-Con showed my portfolio to a nobody, and she tore me a new one on how bad it was. And so I kind of said, okay, fine, I'm never going to draw again. And that was a huge, you know, emotional wound for me that I bore for a long time. And then I was writing. And well, then I went to writing, and then I left writing and was doing game design, and that was the first art job and hobby where when somebody said, well, that doesn't work, I wasn't offended. I was like, okay, well, let's fix it. Yeah. And that then enabled me to come back to writing again and say, oh, I can take critiques, and how do you, and it still hurts. And so I like to help people, you know, figure out how are you best going to inoculate yourself to critiques by having 30 beta readers if you can find them.
Well, and also the village, like building your, that's why building your village is so important, because I know if I come to you and I hand you my first draft and it's a mess, you're going to give me honest feedback from the perspective of wanting me to succeed. Right. And that's also because
I don't want to read crap.
Exactly.
Like published crap. So like, I want you to be an author so that when I do say, well, you need to read Tori's books, it's not like, you need to read Tori's books, I guess, because I have my friend is like, no, I want to say it so that when they read it and say, oh, she was right, they're like, yeah, Sherlock.
Obviously, I have amazing taste. Excuse me. Well, it depends on who you ask, because I have had some comments in my under my videos recently that apparently I'm not a real reader, guys. This is new information as of this week. I was not aware. I should. I've thought about it. I've been found out. So apologies to everyone I've ever recommended a book to. Sorry. That's the thing. Like, you just have to get to a point too where I love sending drafts to my friends for critiques, because you get so like tunnel visioned and exhausted looking at your own work for months and sometimes longer, that giving it to someone else makes me really excited, because they're going to notice things that are going to restart my creativity.
Right.
And I love that. Anitha knew it the whole time. Yep. I'm a fraud. Sorry, guys. I appreciate, it's been a good run. I read the Spark Notes, Britton. That's how I do all my book reviews. For anybody who watches this and clips that and thinks I was serious, I don't read Spark Notes. I actually read the books.
One of the funniest Spark Notes things that I ever found, you'll hate this because you hate this book, but I grabbed a copy of the Spark Notes for Jekyll and Hyde, which I've read many, many times. And it was 75 pages long. Jekyll and Hyde is 70 pages long. And it's like, if your Spark Notes is longer than the book, maybe just read the book.
But there's so many themes, Andrew.
That's true. There are.
I only mention it because I think it's funny, Hop. It does not bother me at all at this point. No. I've been around for 5 years on BookTube. It takes more than that. Janny says, writing without any life experience means you are only going to create derivative works, cribbed from what you read or absorbed further. Exactly. You have to give your own voice room to breathe.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to answer Anitha's question, and then we're going to go back to Kay, who's been incredibly patient, because it's going to... of course, because I think it's going to spark a very long conversation. So Anitha wants to know, is there any specific book or author you go to if you are stuck with like reading or writing? Maybe both.
Well, two answers would be, like, if I'm stuck writing and I can't figure out what to write, it could be okay to take a break and maybe consume some entertainment elsewhere.
Yes.
Whether that's TV, movies, or other books. Maybe in the like vein, like right now, I've got a project I want to work on at the end of this year, and me watching Peaky Blinders is really doing setting me up for it. If I'm stuck with like plotting, then take a drink. Archetypal Characters by K.M. Weiland is a great mapping book for mapping out archetypal flow, and I do a lot of layering in mine, so it isn't just a hero's journey thing. But my other one for stuck is P.G. Wodehouse. I will listen. I like the books. I love the audiobooks if it's the right narrator. It's hilarious. It's British. It's very, very, very Terry Pratchett. But it elevates my English when I'm editing, especially. So I will listen to a lot of P.G. Wodehouse during editing phase, so that my English goes up, and so does my editing.
This is another reason why you set up a village, you guys, because Andrew reads my books and tells me what character archetypes I'm using. It's great. Because I do not it's so mind-blowing to me how much of that kind of stuff you are aware of and kind of have in the back of your head, because I don't at all. And so I always love hearing which character archetype I used in whatever book.
And there's an advantage to me doing that versus you, is because then I can see a gap where you're like, I know there's something missing here. What I'm missing, and say, well, that's because you're in the Queen arc and she hasn't given the crown over yet, and you need to give over the crown. And then boom, now you've got something like a crown that will peak that dull point in a book. I love that sort of thing.
Yes, I think so. Cliff Notes are the same thing, basically.
Oh yeah. Spark Notes and Cliff Notes both came out in the 90s. Spark Notes died 91 or 92, or like 2001, 2002. But for us 90s folks, Spark Notes and Cliff Notes were the same thing, just two different companies. I think one was Random House, one was Penguin or whatever.
Anitha, behave yourself. Matt says P.G. Wodehouse is one of my favorites. I was introduced to P.G. Wodehouse actually in college in an intro to fiction class, I think. My professor, I'm hoping maybe this year to get him on my channel at some point, because I would love to introduce you guys to Dr. Hannah. He's one of the coolest people I've ever met. One of the world's leading experts on Charles Dickens. He's just the coolest guy. Quintessential English professor too. But he introduced us to P.G. Wodehouse, and I remember watching him laugh hysterically at the P.G. Wodehouse movies he showed us in class, and it was such a fun experience.
I want to answer Doug's question before we move on.
Question or comment?
His comment. So, two best ways to enjoy P.G. Wodehouse are to check out an audiobook that is read by Jonathan Cecil specifically. Jonathan Cecil. He delivers it really funny with great voices, and turn it up to 1.25 for the speed, because it will make all the Britishisms quippy as opposed to droll, and it makes Wodehouse even faster. Two, look up the show, which is Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie play. Oh my gosh, what are their names?
Fry and Laurie?
Jeeves and Wooster.
Oh,
the show is called Jeeves and Wooster, and they play the two opposites of that, and it's perfectly delivered. There is another show that's about Blandings that makes it more it's more on the edge of absurd in its style, but it's still really funny. So if you want to try again, try a Jeeves and Wooster, or specifically Leave It to P. Smith. I think that's the best book he's written, but only read by Jonathan Cecil. There's another narrator who's good too, but he's very, very droll. So if you want fast and quippy and funny, and you're going to laugh out loud, or at least cackle to yourself, get Jonathan Cecil for an audiobook narrator.
Nice. I love The Artful Dodger. He's one of my favorite fictional characters of all time. So I feel that. Evie misheard and thought I wanted to get PG Wodehouse on my channel. I wouldn't say no. But that might be a little tricky.
Yeah, it might take some necromancy.
It would. Yep. Okay, going back, because we have a couple of questions that I actually starred because I'm figuring out how to use this now.
Nice.
I never answered Anitha's question. Yes, about comfort authors. When I'm writing and I specifically want to read epic fantasy, right now is perfect. I'm reading Malazan right now, and Erickson was one of my big inspirations to write epic fantasy. And it's going to be awesome because I'm reading it right now. And then later on in the year, I'll be writing book 2 for Bruhai. And I'm at a point now where my influences don't overtake my voice anymore. They just make me really excited to write my books.
Yeah.
And so I think reading Erickson for me, especially if I'm going into epic fantasy, it just challenges me to think bigger. It challenges me to describe things in a much more raw and gritty way, which is something that I've always loved, and dig into my characters farther. Janie gave me great advice at one point, just to dig deeper in everything. And so that if I just want a comfort read, I have weird comfort reads according to a lot of people, because I usually pick up Red Rising or White Fang if I need a comfort read. And a lot of people are confused by that, because those are not like, I think they're wonderful, but apparently that's weird. So yeah, it's usually a comfort reread though. I'll usually like, if I'm in a reading slump, I usually go back to something I know I will love and just not have to work. My brain doesn't have to work so hard to create a new space for it. So yeah, that's my answer to that. Okay. Janny wants to know, we bounce off each other so much. Did you ever imagine you might collaborate? Well,
it's been discussed.
It's been discussed. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if we do something at some point. I have no idea what that would look like.
Yeah.
Because we work so differently within the writing space that we'd have to figure out what that looks like and how to make it work.
Well, the issue would be is we would probably chat for a while, over months, and then you would disappear while I outline, and then I'd have to lasso you back in and remind you a book even exists, and then we could start drafting. It would be gone. It would be gone from you.
Impressively accurate, and I don't want to talk about it. It's absolutely true. Yeah, I'd probably forget everything we talked about, and then as soon as I'm in the draft, I'd be like, "Oh yeah," and then I'd go off in a completely different direction. And Andrew
then we both spend time worrying whether you like what I've written, and worrying.
Yeah, you only say you like what I wrote. Yeah, but it would be fun.
That's from last week.
I think though that with all that aside, despite the fact that our writing styles are like incredibly different, I think though that you and I are honest enough, and that we're also not sensitive. We're not too sensitive to work on something collaboratively. Yeah. Like if you come and you're like, "Nah, I don't like this. This isn't the right direction." I'd be like, "Okay, how do we fix it?" Instead of being like,
It would also be something not in either of our worlds, so then we could kill each other's darlings indiscriminately.
Which would be awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be carnage. It would be great. But, right. Anitha says, sometimes comfort is coming back to a world or characters we know. Yes. Completely right. And Kay has a great idea. Maybe we should write a series about bread making barbarians. That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Going back to, Red Rising is a comfort read for me too. That's awesome. Yeah. Evie understands me. I love that these are your comfort reads, Evie. That's awesome. I'm going to start one of these comments, and then I'm going to go up because Kayla had a question that we are now going to answer, because it's going to take us a little while, I think. What's the most significant growth that we've seen in our writing over the years? Which is a fantastic question. There's so many different parts to this answer, I feel like. I don't know about you, but there's like...
I mean, my biggest growth is between me quitting in 2011 after I wrote a first draft of a book, and 2017 when I started writing the Calatian Saga as it started now. And that growth, not just in better plotting and just learning to be a better writer, but I was told back then how bad and deplorable my dialogue was. And at some point, my dialogue got better. Yeah. I don't know how it happened or when it happened. It just did, because people will then say, "You have great dialogue." And I'm like, I guess I do. I don't know.
Do I?
Yeah. So it's one of those things where, because of, and that wasn't even a wound. I knew it was bad. I knew the time I was better at describing.
No, so we all have all our weaknesses. Yeah.
Right. The fact that I am better now because people tell me so, it doesn't even compute because it's just what I do. And it's probably because I had an extra 10 years of life experience and knew how to hold a conversation better.
And also inputted a lot more good entertainment and literature.
So that's probably the biggest fix, is dialogue from out of college versus dialogue in my 30s.
Yeah. I'd say in terms of writing, so many different things. I think, and this is a hard one for me to answer to some degree because I started as young as I did, that an easy answer for this question is like, I grew up.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously, same as Andrew, the life experience from when I started writing and published my first book at 14 to now at 33 is just all sorts of significantly different. I think I would say that my willingness to an openness to hearing critiques has shifted dramatically since I was young, because I went through the early years of everything I write is the coolest and just like the best thing ever. And I won't hear anything else, because if you say it's not, then I'll be like,
I write so original.
I'm so original. This is not like Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron meets Narnia at all.
It's more like Narnia meets Stallion of the Cimarron.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally different.
Totally different thing. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, I look back at those books and I see the foundation of who I was going to become as a writer. And that's what I love so much about them, because I can see back in those books, even at those early years, the obsessions that I was going to have, that I still have. I'm still obsessed with loyalty. I'm still obsessed with self-sacrifice. And I still love writing military stories. I love writing about soldiers. I love writing about found family. All of those things were in those books and already, and gave me a playground in a way to build where I'm at now. So yeah, I'd say, but I would say, like, I learned how to trust my voice. Imposter syndrome can be a really tough thing, especially when you don't feel really confident in your writing voice yet. And it takes a little bit to find that. And I feel like I'm at a point now in my 30s where I trust my voice enough to know that I can write a good book. And it's just, how do I challenge myself? What kinds of things do I need to be aware of as my weaknesses? And leaning on my friends and my readers to help me see the things that I don't see as I'm going through the first few passes. So yeah, I'd say I'm way less sensitive. Like, I'm not getting my boxing gloves on every time somebody doesn't like my book. I was like, when I was young, I kind of had to get over that pretty fast, because I was in sort of an in-person spotlight so quickly, which now we've got the internet, so I can just close my computer and leave. Whereas there it was like face to face, which is a lot different.
That's really healthy. It's healthy to know not only your weaknesses but your tropes, so you can decide when to lean into them and say, screw it, I'm doing it anyway. Try to stop me, because you know what you're doing at that point, as opposed to not knowing you have a weakness and getting weaker and become, you know, authors that we've talked about on the side, we won't talk about here, who are getting weaker as you go when they ought to be getting stronger, you would think. And is that because they're not being challenged? Is that because they're too stubborn? It's on them, because it's all personal growth of what you need to do with yourself, is knowing that you've got skeletons in your closet of how badly you took a critique one time, and knowing that skeleton's still there is a great acknowledgement, rather than just saying, well, there was never a skeleton. I was never sensitive. How dare you say that? Okay, cool. Good for you.
How about we all take a breath?
I'm an adult.
Touch some grass. And this is something I always tell people too when we talk about, because I've been asked quite a few times, how do you handle criticism and that kind of stuff with your writing, which is a learned experience. That's a learned thing as much as anything else. I think it's one of the hardest things to learn about a career in writing, honestly.
And the longer you avoid it, the harder it is to overcome.
Amen. Just get it out of the way. Like, I was told at age 16 that someone had thrown my book in the garbage because it was awful and she didn't want anyone else to ever read it. And like, when you are coming up against that very early on and very young, like, I'm not bothered by a whole lot anymore. Like, I'm still, yes, I'm human and I'm going to see a 1-star review and go, oh,
Right.
you know, but it's not going to ruin my day. It's not going to stop me from writing. It's I can't have that. Like, those are very different compartmentalized things. Anitha says, I wrote a book. What did you do? Tori's response to critics in her teens. Kinda. Yeah. It was always kind of awkward, to be honest, because people would be like, oh my gosh, you wrote a book. And I'd have to sit there at age, like, whatever it was, 16, 17, and be like, actually, I have 7. Like, it was very awkward sometimes because I never really knew how to, like, that was just what I did. Like, I didn't think of it as being weird because that was my normal. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I would say too, is you have to realize that you can't change their minds. It's not your job to change their minds. In the case of, like, I can think of, like, when my dad, proud of me, introducing me, I'm an adult, and he's introducing me to somebody and saying, oh, this is my son. He's written a book. Oh, really? You wrote a book? But what do you write? Well, I write epic fantasy. Ew. I literally make that face go. Ugh.
I love that face.
And I even a few years ago, it would just make me so mad inside, and I'd be like, just want to fume at them.
It's one of two. It's the ew or the
yeah. And now I'm past that point where it's just like when they go ew, I'm like, cool, no bad review from you. Great. I'm not getting any 1 stars from this person because they're never going to read it. So it's not a harm. In the same way that being healthily respectful of those 1s, 2s, and sometimes even 3 stars, where it's like, oh man, that one hurt. Like, but a well-written 2 or 3 star pushes a whole group of people who will never read your books, and that's a good thing because that means they're not going to read it and write bad reviews as well. So one bad review is an inoculation against other ones.
And it also, because when I go and read reviews for a book I'm interested in, one of the first star ratings I click on is 3 stars.
Yeah.
Sometimes 2 stars, because usually those are the reviews that are going to give you both sides. They're going to give you I liked this about it, but this was something that just didn't work for me. I really didn't like this character or whatever it is. And that gives you a way more honest, I think, not honest, because the 4 and 5 stars are not dishonest, but it gives you a more balanced look at what, like, is this going to be for me, or is it completely outside my wheelhouse? So yeah, I tend to read the 2 and 3 star reviews first, honestly. Obviously, I check to see if any of my friends have read it and see what they think. But then I go to the 2 and 3 star. Going along with Britton's comment here about, generally think I'm good at dialogue. Most people I've shown my work. This is another important thing I think that goes with your beginning, and we kind of touched on this earlier, being very open to visualizing and looking at your strengths and weaknesses, knowing I will never be able to world build the way Andrew does. It's just not how I work. It's just not how I work. It's just not how I work. I think one of the strengths that I have and that I've always really loved is an ability to emotionally connect my characters to my readers. That's something that is really important to me. And I really focus on that. And sometimes my world building sort of falls by the wayside because of it. So I think all of us have emphases, you know, within our writing.
We also put a lot of our processes in place to make up for our weaknesses. So absolutely. Like, it's been a while since I've used this analogy, but when I was writing in 2017 is also when I learned to brew beer, and I was broke and I was not going to spend $1,500, $2,000 on a brew system. We bought buckets, bought a burner, did it on propane. And so it could have been really crappy beer, but I specifically chose to do other things like be extra clean. I'm not organized or clean. So that was a big change for me. I chose to harvest my own yeast. So I learned these other skills so that if there was a problem with my product, I knew why it had occurred, and I could say it was my fault. So like the same thing, by Even K. So in writing is the same thing. I do all of this, outlining and stuff for character arcs, not because I'm trying to make sure I hit all the points, because honestly, I throw a lot of them out, but just like where I'll have a character and say, I'm going to base this character off of Chris Pratt as Star-Lord. It does not mean he's going to be, by the time the book's done, as Chris Pratt as Star-Lord, but it creates a shorthand for me to place him in scenes and
get a skeletal structure there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So having those things in place really give me what I need to start writing And then I can go over and remask and be the director and tell the actor who's come in with a preconceived notion that I'm going to play Star-Lord and I'm Chris Pratt. You're like, okay, cool, tone it down. What I need you to do in this scene is be X. And so then I can kind of start guiding my characters, and very stagecrafty in the way that I write, because I let them have room to breathe. So long as they follow the script, they can be the character they want, right? There's a million different ways to perform Hamlet.
Your characters follow a script?
They do. Mine follow the script.
Mine do not. Mine are like...
I mean, they follow the script, but like on a stage where
yeah, there's flexibility.
Unless you're doing Sherlock,
right.
Unless you're doing Shakespeare, you might go off script a little bit. You might have to ad lib a little bit, and that might be a better scene because of it. And that's cool. I'm great with that. I just want to know that when it's time for intermission, people want to get their popcorn, and so I want it to hit my beats so that I've hit my scenes. But that's been a...
This is probably one of the best compliments you could have given him, Britton, honestly.
Absolutely.
Andrew can't stand Viggo Mortensen.
No, not at all. I don't have a signed copy of Return of the King signed by the king himself.
That's insane. That's insane.
Very happy. My son finally saw the movie, and I showed him the book, and he was like, "Oh, that's cool." I'm like, you're not my son anymore.
Disowned. Who would you say, okay, so we always talk about as writers who are like author influences are, who are some of the character influences for you? Like, who are some of the great characters you've read that have really stayed with you?
I thought about this a little bit. There's certain characters that I think we build up in our minds from our childhood too.
Oh, for sure.
Not nearly as good as you think they are.
Yeah.
And I don't hate Viggo. That's a joke. I forgot my sarcasm sign. Sorry. No, I love him dearly. When I met him, I literally wanted to bow to my king. He felt he bears himself so regally. I wanted to. I did not, but I almost did.
They barely saved face.
Barely saved face, but I did have him sign a book for me. So
that's awesome.
But like when I think back to like archetypal characters from when you read in childhood, I think of like, and people will agree with me, one of the best wizards ever written is Raistlin Megere from Dragonlance. I've gone back and tried to read Dragonlance. It doesn't hold up. But the idea of Raistlin is so archetypal that there's like I need to capture that wizard feeling to it. I wrote in my afterword in Dread Knight that while I'm not a dragon person, not that I've read things with dragons in it, but I'm not like infatuated with them.
Right, same.
But having a wizard fight at the top of a tower is a big deal for me. And I always kind of want to work towards that sort of thing. And that's from like David Eddings' books, where there were several times when it was top of the tower or bottom of the dungeon, the fight between the huge magic users. So it's more of that, like the archetypal idea of a character. And sometimes it's okay to not go back and read them so that you can still hold that idea in your head and let them be who they were when you were young. No, you're good.
You're good, Britton. Absolutely fine.
Joking with you.
We also are very used to each other's sarcasm, so sometimes where it comes through for us, it probably isn't translating on screen as much.
I can't draw ellipses like I do when I'm typing to Tori and telling her something completely dripping.
Batman is an awesome character.
Yes.
Batman's one of my favorite superheroes for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. We were talking about characters. I'm trying to think. Edmund from Narnia as a very early influence for me, because I think, he's the relatable character, especially as you get older, because he's the one that doesn't always have that incredibly intense faith that things are going to work out,
And his arc is beautifully written.
Oh, it's amazing.
One of the best things that he wrote in that series is his
agree.
arc all the way through. And I'm talking about not just book one, but I mean through all the way through Dawn Treader. Yeah.
Yep. I love Edmund so much. He's my favorite character in Narnia by far. Yep. And so I think he had a really, and again, I think it's that theme of kind of the very soft anti-hero who then, has that kind of self-sacrificial turnaround, which has always really stuck with me. I loved him. I'm trying to think from Lord of the Rings. I mean, Aragorn's an obvious answer, I feel like. I don't know who I would say from Lord of the Rings, though, most.
I mean, you have a long run of warrior women who are just well-written and well-rounded, who are important to you in not just in books, but in cinema for you too.
Oh, for sure. Celine from Underworld was a big one for me growing up.
And I think, are you and me the only people who have ever watched and liked, or did you hate Van Helsing?
I did not like Van Helsing. I'm so sorry. I tried.
I loved
did
it for how
it,
campy it was, but
it's so
I mean, it's
campy.
not The Mummy, but
The Mummy is one of the campiest things I think I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, I loved a lot of aspects of it, but I was like, Faramir is a good answer. Faramir is a very good character as well. I am looking forward to reading him in the books. Boromir, and at this point, for anybody in the comments, if there's anybody going to yell at me for spoilers for Lord of the Rings, guys, it's been around for ages. I'm so sorry.
King Kong dies. Sorry.
What? Boromir's death scene in Fellowship, like, that really impacted me a lot. Because again, it's the same thing as Edmund, right? You can see the patterns already where it's somebody who really struggled and was, you know, kind of anti-hero-ish, and then has the self-sacrificial turnaround. And I love that. Another character that was incredibly influential to me was Danny from Pearl Harbor. He's one of my favorite cinema characters of all time. I'm trying to think. Brienne of Tarth from
I was thinking
from
both Brienne and then of course Lagertha too.
Lagertha, yeah, she's from Vikings. Yep, I really liked her character a lot. Brienne was an awesome character because the thing with Lagertha is she's stunning. Like, right? Like, she comes on screen and she's immediately this warrior queen, you know. Brienne,
and not two-dimensional at all.
No.
I mean, the whole series is there a two-dimensional character in that cast?
Yeah.
Maybe definitely. Bjorn, but even him, he grew. He started off very two-dimensional. Not Bjorn, sorry. I meant his brother.
Which one?
Ragnar's brother.
Oh, Rollo,
sorry.
Yeah. I agree with that.
No.
I love Bjorn.
Bjorn had a fantastic growth.
Bjorn is like my favorite character after Lagertha.
100%. He is one of two actors I would cast as Jinnid in a second. First of two actors I would call. And his growth as just a kid who was on Hunger Games to being Bjorn Ironside is a massive just growth in the fact of just seeing him go from boy to man so quickly.
Absolutely.
And he's a great actor.
Role.
Yeah,
he is. Yeah, I was very impressed with his role.
Alexander
as Bjorn
Ludwig.
Yeah. I was trying to think. Yeah, I also love Floki, obviously, because he's just unhinged.
Doug mentioned Silk from Belgariad. Then you need to read Thrice, because there's a character in there that was you always wanted Silk to have his own book, so I gave you that in one of the side characters. And I'm going to write a book eventually.
Yes, Balto.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, another one of my most influential characters of all time. I love Balto so much. The songs, the soundtrack of Balto, when he's in the snowstorm meeting the White Wolf, it lives in my brain rent free for the rest of my life. It's incredible. Yes, Danny is from Pearl Harbor, and Britton, I disagree with this. I do not think Pearl Harbor is campy, but that's fair that you have that opinion.
Yeah, they're in the plains. There's no camping at all.
No. Well, are there tents anywhere in Pearl Harbor? I'm trying to remember. I can't remember. There's some canvas for sure. Let's see. There you go. Casey.
Lyra's here.
Casey likes. Oh, hi.
Can you just sing a song for him?
Nico and his baby have arrived. That's so awesome. I love this community. It's the best. It's the best place ever.
The community for several months.
Yeah, I know. I pulled back. I pulled back from Motley Crew a little bit last year just because everything was so much in 2024, and I feel like this year I was really excited to start setting up some chats and stuff again. It is very, that I totally agree with. It is a very sappy movie, and I love every minute of it. And I've seen it probably 20 times, and I still cry. The guy from Shogun who plays both sides. Yeah, it starts with a Y, Anitha. I think you're right, but I can't remember his name either, but he is quite fabulous. Zero wants to know, who are some older underrated authors you think more people should check out?
I mean, the easy answer is Jenny Words. If you haven't read her yet, you got to break in. It's you have to read it and set out time to read it. It's not something where you're going to just read a couple pages here or there. That ain't happening. So make a plan to sit down and just read a Jenny Words, because
this is a standalone.
You want elevated English. Boom. That's it.
Yep.
So older authors. Oh, well, okay. Take a drink. Lois McMaster Bujold. I discovered her not first for Kozigan, which is her sci-fi stuff, but her fantasy, which is the World of the Five Gods, starting with Curse of Chalion. Was blown away when I read that book. You have a big one. That's gorgeous.
I can't read mass market paperbacks anymore.
Yeah. But please read Lois McMaster Bujold's fantasy. Very, very, very different from her sci-fi. Her sci-fi is much more as is, like the language is very, I would even put it in almost like a even though it was written in the 90s, more of a 70s or 60s style prose of just kind of, here are the facts, here's the story, very sparse. Versus I thought Curse of Chalion is beautiful. It's not overly flowery, but it's just really well done. Other old authors.
Carol Berg.
I haven't read her yet.
Yeah, but you should.
Yeah.
Yeah. So along the lines of Janny's works, I read To Ride Hell's Chasm in January last year, and it's a fantastic contained standalone that will give you a really good grasp of her writing style and the type of prose that she uses. So yeah, that's one that I always recommend.
Yeah.
Also,
I just read the first 2 books of Prydain.
Okay.
I thought the second one was okay. The first one was better. I like the first one. If you want an old English Welsh style story, then Prydain, and it's YA. It's YA-ish, I would say. Very light. People, well, it's pretty dark, and as an adult, it's not that dark. But it was just a really well done. Like, if you've ever studied the Mabinogion and Old Welsh storytelling, that's the way to go. Yeah.
I'm this is one of my priority reads for this year, because I have heard amazing things about Paxenarian, and I've also been told that as a female warrior aficionado that I'm going to absolutely love this. So nice. I cannot wait.
Nice.
I'm trying to think who else. I mean, I'm trying to remember, Juliette Marillier started in 1999 or 2000, I think. Which is still older than a lot of the modern stuff we read, and I would highly recommend her as well. She is a delightful human being.
Right.
Let's see.
There are old books that I enjoyed as a kid that I wouldn't recommend today for today's fantasy readers. Yes, you're welcome, Nico. I wouldn't suggest David Eddings for a new fantasy reader, or Dragonlance. I don't think. They have a place in my heart just because I read them in as 11 and whatever, but they're I've got Sherry's The Paladin. I need to read that. It's on my shelf. I've been waiting to read it.
I need to read Sherry in general. I've her name has come up so many times, and I don't have one of her books yet, so I need to try one. I just thought of somebody else, and then it went away from my brain. Carol Berg's Song of the Beast I read last year and loved it. Andrew, you need to read it because it's fantastic. Add it to your list.
my list right now.
So what are some of the, since we're talking about that, what are lots of love for Prydain in the chat. Anitha Octavia Butler. Yep, that's another one that's come up. She's been there's been a lot of people reading Octavia Butler on BookTube this last year, which is awesome. that's what I was going to say, is anybody who's interested in trying Lois McMaster Bujold, Anitha and I are planning to read Shallion in February. So if anyone wants to read it at the same time-ish as us, Female Warrior Bar None, CJ Cherry's the Paladin. I will go buy it after the stream, because I never knew, like, it with older authors that have a large canon of work, it can be really overwhelming trying to figure out where to start.
He's got a canon.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I will. Don't let me forget that.
I won't.
Okay, Lynn Fluelling. I don't know that I've ever heard that name.
Good Welsh name.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Marlon James is newer, I think, because that's the Black Leopard Red Wolf writer. I think he's newer. Cherry's I've heard Foreigner. Foreigner is another one that I've heard of that I would like to try. Barbara Hambley. Yeah, if anybody ever wants to know which pre-90s authors or pre-2000s authors to read, DM Janie Wirtz, because she has a gold mine list of amazing authors that everyone should be reading and trying. I tried Andre Norton for the first time last year, and Patricia McKillop actually is another one that I should mention. Forgotten Beasts of Eld is a really beautiful kind of dark fairy tale, dark folklore vibes. Yep, don't worry, Daniel. I don't think Marlon James is going to be for me either, based on what I've heard, but I appreciate that Britton enjoyed his work so much. I feel like, who was just talking? Oh, Matt on Books was just talking about this series, I think. Okay, there were a couple of comments that I starred. One that I just wanted to briefly respond to. So one of the things that I think our community does a disservice in is over emphasizing one aspect of a book or series or author, if that makes sense. Like Malazan, everybody's like, oh, this is the hardest, most intimidating, like, you know, whatever. And I'm on my reread now, and it's complicated. It's a complicated world, but it's not like, it's not going to boil your brain in your head. and it's okay. Erickson's very good at giving you everything you need to know. And there's a lot of extra stuff if you're looking for it. Like, you're not going to get to the end of the series and be like, I have no idea anything that happened in 10 books. That's not going to happen. So if you ever feel like starting Malazan, just as someone who really loves it and knows that it can be very intimidating for a lot of people, just start it and just see what happens, I think, and just let everybody else's.
And if it doesn't work, it sits on your shelf and you'll try it again in a couple years.
Yeah. Or you get a book or two in and you're like, oof, this really isn't for me. That's okay. Hop also wants to know, what are some of our favorite collaborations in literature? That's a great question.
I haven't read a whole lot of collaborations.
Ooh, I have one. This isn't cheating. It's not cheating. Where is it? Hold on. This is the part where I have to figure out where I put my books, which is a bit of a challenge. Hold on. Dang it, where is it? Seasons of Albion by Chris Warman and Elon Marche. It's amazing. Husband and wife team in the indie community was one of the first indie books I read when I first got into the community. And you guys, like, it's so good. Don't let the cover fool you. It is darker than the cover would indicate. But it's a really tiny little book separated into 4 somewhat tied stories in 4 different seasons. And it is absolutely brilliant.
I have been wanting to try Raven Penn's book too.
Oh, okay.
You know, Blake and Raven Penn.
Yeah.
You know, I need to try more dragon books, I guess. So
if we have to, I guess. Another one that I'll mention is it's mostly written by Bryce O'Connor. But Iron Prince with Bryce O'Connor and Luke Chmalenko. I think Luke was mostly like a sounding board for the most part, from what I understand. But clearly they did something well, because the relationships, like I've read better plotted books, I've read better writing, but the relationships in that book are some of the best I've read in a long time, just in terms of how real and authentic they feel. I'm trying to think if I've read any other like collaborative. The Advent of Winter, you guys should check out. It's got a bunch of great authors in it. Yeah, that one's
I guess, if you go with anthologies, I mean, I've also read a lot of, like, back in the early 2000s, Warhammer 40,000 fiction, which requires a body of people writing things, whether that's the actual author, that I've enjoyed.
Also, I hear that there's a fantastic trilogy by Janny Wirtz and Raymond E. Feist.
I have heard that too, yes.
Which you should also check out. I have not read that one yet, but I've heard it's very good. Cherry's brother, David Cherry, is a brilliant artist. Nice. Janny says, CJ Cherry has never written a dud book, but I wouldn't recommend starting with Rusalka. It's very dark, not her usual themes. Good to know. Yeah, if anybody needs recommendations, just go to Nico's Book Reviews, subscribe, and then look for his 2000 celebration, because Janny was part of that and had a lot of really great recommendations. I mean, if you really want to read Gene Wolfe, I'm not going to stop you. Have fun, Nico. Yep, there's a bunch. King. I'm excited to try The Expanse too, with Ty Frank and Daniel Abraham. That took me a minute. Joe Walton and Ada Palmer are collaborating on a series. That's awesome. Also, speaking of collaborations, actually, I just got a new book, which if you follow my Instagram, you probably have already seen. But I got the new Fonda Lee with Shannon Lee, who is Bruce Lee's daughter. Bruce Lee's daughter. And she and Fonda wrote a book that is YA fantasy based on Bruce Lee, which is so cool. And the fact that Fonda Lee was part of it is the reason I bought it, because I knew that, like, cool story, awesome inspiration, and Fonda Lee's involved. It's going to be amazing. I'm so excited. And the coolest part is I got it from a website called Signed Pages, which means that I have Shannon and Fonda's signatures in it, which is super cool. So I'm going to hopefully be reading that soon as well. But I know Kate from the Literary Apothecary was reading it already, and she said it was quite good. So let's see. Thieves' World books are very good, but the collaborations broke down badly in later books. That would be the tough part, is I feel like writing a standalone would be a lot different than, like, if you're trying to do a series over a long period of time, that would be tough unless you have a very, very good working relationship and a similar shared vision. Janny had an interesting comment too. Prefer to read with no review ahead of me at all. The way the book speaks for itself and my reactions are exact and clear. That's my preference, unless it's a book that I don't know how I'm going to, like, if I'm kind of waffling back and forth on, do I actually want to read this? Is it going to, be a good / bad experience? Then I'll usually go and check out some reviews, but typically I try to go in blind. I haven't asked you this yet. What are you reading right now?
I just finished Rukio 3.
Okay,
I'm
Demon in
waiting
White.
for number 4 to come out. The audiobook to come.
I was going to say.
No, well, I have to wait to buy book 4 because they haven't re-released the hardbacks yet, and I'm not spending $5,000. But the rumor is 2025 they're going to do the next 3 re-releases hardbacks. I really want the original art because this whole series, the art is just absolutely
beautiful.
Stunning. Yeah. And I don't want to mix my reviews or mix my copy. And then what was I about to start? Oh, well, I have a book in the mail that's coming to me that I will be reading as soon as it gets to me. Sent from somewhere in Minnesota. I don't know. And that is J.L. Odom's Of Blood and By Blood, By Salt. So I am reading that as soon as that arrives. So I'm kind of like in interim waiting for that book to arrive so I can read that.
Well, it is officially on its way to you now.
It is. And then I'm behind on Hob. I promised myself in 2023 when I read Fool's Errand, I would read one Hob a year, and didn't happen in 2024. So I'm behind by a year. So I'm probably going to have to go ahead and read the rest of that trilogy, Tawny Man trilogy. And I'm also behind on Janie's Or Light and Shadow. So I started book 2, but I have to get back to it because then I started writing, and that gets in the way.
It's annoying.
So those are, I have a huge shelf of what has to happen in 2025. So 2025 is going to be a much better reading year. But it'll also be heavy because I got a lot of heavy hitters from the ones I mentioned. And then also
By Blood by Salt is actually pretty short.
That's why that's one of the reasons I'm excited, but not just because it's short. And then Guns of the Dawn is on top of the list. And then I've got a whole bunch of indies I'm just behind on that I've had and I've not got a chance to read. So
Story of my life.
I got to get through them because they're ones that I've desired to read, and they've just been waiting for me, and so they're waiting very patiently.
Yes. Well, and I'm hoping potentially to, if I can get my butt moving, to have a book for you to read in the near future.
See, I like that's also hanging over my head. Like as soon as that's done, whatever I'm doing, it's fine. Just whatever happens is I drop it, and I'm reading that, like, because I gotta get back to you for one. But I want to read that book. So, and plus it's winter. So,
I'm going to be hovering over your shoulder the entire time.
That's just fine. Yeah. We'll have to do it on sprints.
Like I'll send it, and 5 minutes later, be like, "What do you think?"
Okay. Yeah.
Britton wants to know, besides the ones you mentioned, what other ones do you have on your reading list for 2025?
God's Blood Tragedy by Bill Adams.
Mm-hmm.
Thieves and Shadows by B.S. Garcia.
Yep.
I have to finish Hills of Heathers and Bone.
Mm-hmm.
Spectral, that's by K.E. Andrews. A.J. Cerna's Spectral, and then I haven't had a chance to read any T.A. Bruno yet. So I've got Orbit of Sirens I'm going to read.
I'm reading that this year as well. Buddy read.
I'd like to get to Hyperion finally. Like I've wanted to read it since it came out 20 years ago, but I've just never gotten around to it. And then there's another author who I think more people should check out called Marshall Ryan Maresca. So he's through DAW, and he wrote for the first series he wrote was 12 books. They all take place in the same city, and it's 3 different. It's kind of an Avengers type.
Sure.
It all comes together in the 12th book, where each there's like one that's Batman with magic going to college, and he has 2 books. That character has 2 books. Then there's a street paladin who is able to use shields to block things, and there's 2 books of them. And then there's a thieves crew, and that's in them. And then the 4th one is police precinct. So it's all street level fantasy in a late medieval like setting. Nice. And they're all in one city. They never leave the city. And that was 12 books until like the Avengers event that happens in the 12th book that finally ties them all together and makes them work together. And now he's written, I think he's writing the 2nd series now that takes place 10 years later and is starting to go out into the world. But he's really cool because you can start anywhere in the 12 book series. You don't have to read them in order. There are mentions between books where they'll mention something that happens or a character will show up kind of like in Avengers. But let me grab one of them so you can see it.
Okay. Yes, Pete, I love that you're so excited about this book too. I got a copy of it for Andrew to read, and it's on its way to his house. So
like the Holver Alley Crew by Marshall Ryan Maresca.
Okay.
This one, I think this was actually number 2. I have number 1 sitting there, but Import of Intrigue is one of the precinct ones.
They don't look like they're crazy long either.
No, they're just little mass markets.
Nice.
So they're very readable, but it's also like you can skip around and be like, I don't care about that character. I'm not going to read it. Don't. They're all standalone.
Nice.
But like this one, the Holver crew is a heist crew that, has their house, their whole neighborhood's burnt down, and they decide to take revenge by stealing from the person who destroyed them. And then there's a second book for them, and then it all ties together. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed when authors have like that much of a big picture vision going forward. I mean, I do a little bit with the 2 series with Legends of the Bruhai and the one after it, but to be able to plot it that tightly is very impressive to me.
Exactly. Yeah. And he looks great in a vest, the author.
Good to know. Yeah. Zero says, I thought that was a Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver box behind you. Is he talking about your... Yeah. You should show everybody what that is, because that is.
I don't have a battery in it right now, so it's not going to light up. But oh my gosh, it's so heavy.
Cool.
So this is steel. My uncle has a laser cutter or a plasma cutter, and he cut it out, and so it's the symbol of my series, the Collation Saga. And when I've got batteries in it, the LEDs light up, so I can.
It's so cool.
Light it. Yeah.
That is super.
Very happy to have
that. Matt mentioned Rosemary Kirstein's Steerswoman books, and Janny says that is criminally underrated. So there's another. Britton is starting Malazan and Discworld. That is an awesome combo, and I really hope you... Hey, I mean, it's a really good, I need something different after each book. Yep. I hope you enjoy both. Green Team said, does someone say Malazan? Yes, we are. There's quite a few of us Malazan fans around this area. Haunt on the Island of Esmer by Justin Blair. Black Company meets Bridge Burners with haunted relic hunting. Nice.
That almost sounds like the new Abercrombie, which sounds really fun, by the way.
Devils, yeah.
The Devils, yeah.
Let's see. Then The Whisper by Kay Ross. Sentient Curse, learning about the world and then getting interesting. That's cool. Talking about the steel cutout thing is very cool.
It was a cool present. Yeah, it weighs like 20 pounds.
I believe it. Eventually, I really want to get the Bruhai mask done as like a 3D piece and then have it hanging up there. And eventually, when I'm, a millionaire and have sold millions of books, I want to pay someone to make the double-bladed spear that Zario uses. True, like John Douglas's Black Crown. I've heard really good things. And not just from you, Janny. But I've heard a lot of good things around the indie community with that one. I am currently reading Memories of Ice by Steven Erikson, and
number 3, right?
This is number 3. This is such a big book, you guys. It's so massive. The trade paperback specifically, and I'm almost 100 pages in, and I love this series so much. I love it so much. It's been so much fun to get back to it and read it in the stage of life that I'm in now, as opposed to when I started it. But there are only a few authors that I would read alongside Malazan and not constantly be comparing and being like, well, I'm trying not to notice. But one of the authors I can easily do that with is Jamie Odom, and that's one of the reasons why I'm telling everybody to read her work, because I'm telling you guys, this is an author to watch. I'm very excited to see her career grow, because she has so much raw talent. It's kind of insane.
You said her prose is incredible.
Oh, beautiful prose. The way, so I have a hard time, and I actually told her this today as I had just started. This is the advanced reader copy of her book 2, which is coming out early February. And I was talking to her today about how I actually have a really hard time visualizing environments and like where things are in relation to the characters oftentimes. And with her books, I don't know what it is, but the way that her descriptions are and the way that she uses her prose to engage you with the environment and the characters makes so much sense in my head. And it's like, for the first time, I feel like I have glasses on in a book. Oh, I can see that, which is really nice, because it's really hard for me to like spatially recognize where things are in books. Even in something like Malazan, I have to really try to figure out, or like pretty much anything I read, but
I'm looking forward to it.
I love that.
Yeah. That's what happened. That's why I fell so hard reading Rakia. because I felt the same way, and I'm listening to
Yeah.
it, but it's hit and miss with any audiobook, whether something's going to be like I tried both book ones from John Gwynn, and I couldn't do the
not the audio
audiobook because there was too much to try to keep track.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to keep track in Christopher Rocchio, but the audiobooks, I've been able to do so much while listening, and I never feel lost.
That's awesome.
And it's just a movie in my head, and it's been a while since I've had a book that's done that really well. Brian McClellan's books do that really well. His audiobook, but it's like, and so I am very looking forward to Odom, because that's what I want, is paint a picture in my head.
From my experience, and especially reading these back to back, like if you want this kind of a feel to the world and the character interactions and relationships, and a lot of hidden layers that slowly get revealed over the story, but you want it not in like massive Malazan format, I'm going to be recommending her series probably to like every Malazan fan I know, because it's not as complex to keep track of either, because it's a much smaller cast, and it's beautifully written. You can tell that Jamie is a linguist, and that she has been to the places that inspired this book, which is very cool. I've heard this a lot, actually, that the Alex Verus series is a good like Dresden either alternative or for people that want more of it. But yeah, I started reading this today, and I got through one page, and I sent Jamie a message on Instagram, and I was like, can you leave some talent for the rest of us? Like, stop. One page. I'm very excited about these characters, and she utilizes and I can't say too much about it, but in the first book, she utilizes a character arc structure that I've never seen done before, and it's so brilliant. And I can't talk about it because it would ruin everything by saying anything about it, but it's so fascinating to watch how she manages that, which I know is super vague. I'm so sorry, guys, but trust me, just read it. That's awesome. Please do, because she's excellent. And this is her debut series. I'm always so impressed with authors that come out with these absolute banger first series. And I'm like, imagine where they're going to go from here, and like where they're going to be in 10 years, 15 years. It's going to be just wild to watch. So in the indie sphere, who are some of the up and coming authors that you think are people to watch?
Well, we can't emphasize Joe enough.
J.C.M. Byrne.
Yeah, enough people.
Absolutely.
People need to read his books.
Yep, J.C.M. Byrne.
I am really looking forward to the next couple of years to see what comes out of Zach Diamante. I think he's about to hit his sophomore year, so to speak.
This is his current series.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out, a year from now. I read his Garden of the Gardens. I thought it hit his style of writing really well. Yep. I also can't wait for more Tana the Tenderfoot to come out. Tender Sword. Sorry, Proud Feet. Because book one is utterly brilliant. Yes. And I'm looking forward to convincing them to write book two.
I had this conversation when I interviewed Dewey and Bill, who are the authors of Tana, which you guys should go watch because it was a really fun chat.
Do not listen to haters. Read the book.
Yes. I am so excited for what they represent in terms of what middle grade could look like going forward in indie. Because I think that is a category that has gotten kind of buried within the YA boom of the last few years. It's been more than a few years, but like the big YA boom has kind of left middle grade behind, I think, in a lot of ways. And in indie, they're like middle grade isn't really a thing yet. There's some of it, but you have to kind of dig for it.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that authors like Dewey and Bill will inspire more people to indie publish middle grade and really get that off the ground.
I agree.
So, yeah. Britton says, an unknown guy named Philip Chase, Way of a Dan series. Ted Steele, Player Manager series. Nice. Nick Horvath. I've heard a lot of people talking about Sledge recently. It's been all over the place. So
How about you?
Well, obviously Odom. Other than that, another person you guys should be watching is Jacqueline Hagan, who is the Riverfall Chronicles author. She genre blends like a boss. It's so cool. Like, I never knew I needed Gaslamp mixed with Dickensian, and also it's very epic fantasy. It's still very epic fantasy. I had no idea that I needed that in my life until I read this book and absolutely loved it. And it's so effortless when she does it too. You don't even question it. You're just like, oh yeah, obviously, obviously that works. And I think she's going to be another person to watch. I think this is a 7-book series, and she just put out book 4 last year. Book 5's coming out this year.
And they're fat.
They are. Book 3 is the biggest one, I think. And that one's, it's chunky. 600 some pages. I mean, chunky books are kind of a thing in fantasy, though, Andrew.
They are, and we get to because we can.
Right, but should we always? No.
Depends on the story. Yeah.
Depends on the story.
So to circle back, to do a callback, like that's why Thrice is so short, is because I challenged myself to write a short book.
Right.
After my epic fantasy was started, and because I really wanted to try to challenge myself, and it works great. And now I know that I can write short or long. So
right. Yep. Well, and so I know Bloodstones is actually not super crazy long for epic fantasy. Yeah. Cold Silver is going to be shorter. That one's going to be roughly the same size as Phased, which is, not super crazy long. And I've really enjoyed that because, Bruhai definitely, like Queen's Wolf is going to be longer than Bloodstones. Yeah. I don't know how much longer yet, but it definitely will be the longest thing I've ever written. And Cold Silver it's so much fun because it's very, it's going to be episodes in book form, kind of taking a little bit of inspiration from the serialized Westerns from the 70s, 80s-ish. And I love that. I've had so much fun writing a tighter plot line with one singular main character. Yeah. And now that I'm almost at the end of that, I can't wait to go back to Queen's Wolf. Yeah. And it's such a fun, that's another reason why, like we were talking about earlier, going back and forth to different, something completely different, trying something new can really be good for your creativity. She's putting out books so fast. Jackie or Jamie?
Jackie. Yeah.
Jackie. The third book be as small.
She wants to know about Needle and Leaf. She's begging for me to finish it. So the first 2 books are each 72,000 words.
Okay.
Maybe 76, I forget. The Fife and Drum is going to be 100,000 words. So
just for
a
thickness,
little thicker.
That's what you're looking at.
Yeah, so easy, fast read. Second book is just as long. The third book will be about 50% longer. It's not going to be Collation Saga long, but it's going to need just a little longer because I'm trying to get what could have been 2 books down into 1 to finish in a trilogy. So it'll be a little bit of size creep, but it's not going to be long at all. It'll still be a very short book. So, but I have a lot to get done, so I can leave you satisfied, maybe a little sad. Who knows? I'm not going to tell you. I don't even know.
I better get on that.
I haven't written it. Yeah. Well, I have written it. I have 30,000 words in, but yeah.
Which is like a third of the book.
Yes. What? So
that's like a third of the book almost.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And so because I'm that far enough, I'm I know where I'm at. Like even Evie's not here anymore, but back to Evie's, like, what do you write for fun towards publishing? I also write towards bookmarks, like points where I know I can look at it and say, yeah, this isn't working. And 30,000 is my first
checkpoint.
My first checkpoint.
That makes sense.
And it's an accidental checkpoint. Like it seems like every book I write at 30,000 is where I hit a wall, and then I have to decide where I'm at.
Yeah.
Because 30,000 is not far from the 50% mark usually for like a needle and leaf story. But 50% is my next mark, then 75, then 90, and then I have to finish it.
Yep. That's where I'm at with Cold Silver now. I'm at almost 80,000 words, and I'm at the point where I'm just like, we're like finish line now. Yeah. I'm very close, and I wrote the section I'm in right now, and I don't know if you find this too. Certain sections of the books also take more out of you to write. And so I'm in the climax of the story right now, and there's a lot of things that are hard, that are taking a lot out of me to write. Yeah. And it's like, so today, like, earlier on in the book, I'd put down 3,000-4,000 word days, like nothing. And now I'm getting like 500 words if I'm really lucky, and I'm placing every word, and I'm really trying to pull out the emotion that I want. And the cost from my point as the author has gone up as the book is going along, which I hope will translate to a book that is very emotionally impactful to read. So that's the goal. I
just, you kind of think it's like getting to the end of the book is like parallel parking.
Yeah.
You can do it. But if you can do it right, and you can slide that thing in there, and you're like, bam, did it. It's great.
Got it.
Don't hit the gas and accidentally hit the car behind you in front of you. I've done that.
Right. Yep.
And and it's so stressful because like every page, you're like, am I screwing this up? Am I screwing this up? Am I screwing this up?
Especially at the end. Yep. Yeah. It's like, because it's got to be so good, and like I want all of it to be good, but the ending, I want to lead it. I want people to still be thinking about it when they put it down.
Yeah. My aftermaths, which I started doing in all of my Collation Saga, always has the aftermath, which is the chapter where I hit everybody up for a single little what's happened in the last 2 seconds or whatever afterwards. Those are easy because then I'm like, my climax is done. I just get to tell you where they're at, walk away. I don't give you another 100 pages of prologue to finish the book off, or epilogue, I mean.
Yeah. So Daniel, Bloodstones is almost 500 pages. So the chances that you will get 600 or close to it, or even more than that, I'd say is quite likely for Queen's Wolf. So.
You're already at 500 pages on that one?
480 on Bloodstones. Yeah. And Queen's Wolf is definitely going to be bigger than that.
Sorry, I thought you meant you were already at 500. I'm like, wait, I missed that memo.
No, I wish. No. No, but I actually think I actually outlined. Andrew's seen my outline for the first third of Queen's Wolf.
That's all you got to outline.
Every chapter and everything. And I feel really good about it. And I think once I finish getting Cold Silver out there, I think I'm going to hit the ground running on Queen's Wolf, because I literally cannot handle how badly I want to get back to those characters. I'm so excited to get back to Queen's Wolf, which feels amazing. And that's another reason why I like going back and forth, is because by the time you finish one, you're just like raring to go. You're like, I want to get back to the story. I miss my characters from, well, and I mean, Brew, we all had like Collation for you. Like we all have our, that's our heart series. Absolutely. That's like really ingrained.
Yeah. There's a reason I have like 45 books planned, because
I never want to leave
the world. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, same kind of.
Yeah.
Not
in the same way, kind of. Yeah. Because we're doing different eras, but it's still our world.
Yeah. I've actually heard, and I'll start wrapping it up here soon, but I have actually heard of Lies of the Ajungo being quite good. That is one that I do definitely want to check out. Hanavar by Howard Andrew Jones. Yeah, and as a note for anybody who isn't aware yet, Jones just passed away, I think either today or yesterday.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah. Hail the Victorious Dead.
Yep. So please go check out his books, because I read his first book last year. Really, really brilliant modern sword and sorcery. Episodic, and he kind of tried, like, he kind of gives you different subgenres within each episode of the story, which I thought was really cool. There's one chapter section that's literally like a fantasy horror escape room that was really cool. So highly recommend his books, and definitely thoughts and prayers to his family and friends, because that's just heartbreaking.
If you can buy his books, that'll still go to them. So.
Support them. Yep. It was, yeah. I'm not like I'm the type of writer where I don't want to get bogged down in the story ever, because I just don't have the attention span for that. So I'm glad that it read quickly. So I try to.
Good pacing.
Thanks. I do try to like pace it so that it moves fairly quickly, but then also there are things where when you go back and you like spend a little time, there's things that you can pick out going back.
That's the advantage to multiple point of view, right?
Mm-hmm. That almost is nice, because you have basically the same benefits of switching between series in the same book, because I writing Garen and then switching over to Sindri when I was working on Bloodstones, it was like, you're writing a completely different viewpoint in a different part of the world. So yeah.
Well, it's like in Two Towers, the flipping back and forth between Helm's Deep and Quiet Treebeard and the stress of Mordor is an important move around, because you can't. I mean, Helm's Deep, one of the best, if not the best, battle ever made. If you just watch just that, you would be stressed out, and so you need to have those
breaks and pacing.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, what was it? Who was I talking with about how like
thank you, Nico.
When you're writing really intense scenes, it's why you should drop in. I mean, maybe it was while I talked with JCM and Andy about comedy, that having a joke right before a really serious and really devastating scene is really important. And knowing how to do that is really important, because like the reason you do that is because if you don't, then during the tense scene, people will laugh, because that's how we relieve our stress. Yeah. But if you've laughed before it, you have permission to actually ride the trauma of the scene. It's the same reason why you do like a jump scare with a cat, and then you drop the really disturbing darkness that isn't the jump scare, but it's horror. But you do your cat, and everybody knows the cat. It's just going to be a cat. And then it's going to be something worse. But then you have that tension released because of the jump scare or the joke.
Right.
And you do the same thing where you've got the no spoilers, but the Bruhai and their training is juxtaposed so beautifully to his brother and his story, which is much more slow and takes its time to tell a political intrigue. Yeah.
Thank you. I tried. Yeah, and I think naturally that's something that I'm aware of as I'm creating the different POVs, is I look for, okay, something's missing. I have this one POV, and I want something that gives me something else. Now I want something that gives me something else. And I kind of always piece together so that it doesn't ever feel like too much of the same thing. I don't know, Daniel. Who knows? I don't think it'll be 800 pages, but I won't say never. I think just from a shelf standpoint, it would bother me to have it that much longer than the first book. It would look weird. But I'm excited to read Bujold next month. So, well, Andrew, we've been talking for almost 2 hours, and
surprise.
Shocking. We could easily talk for 5 or 6 every time we get together on the channel. But I want to say, first of all, thank you, chat, so much for hanging out with us and all of your awesome questions and comments and book recommendations. My TBR got longer again. And Andrew, as always, I really appreciate you spending your time on the channel. And I always love to just have a sit down palaver and talk about books. And it's always a good time. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that you hadn't been on for a Motley Crew chat yet was kind of ridiculous.
It's okay. That was your first interview. I already got it down.
Actually, I think you were my third.
Might have been.
No, you were before Thiago?
I don't remember.
Because it was Baptiste, and then you and Thiago, but I can't remember which one of you was first.
I don't know.
But you were in the very beginning, for sure. Yeah. And you were in the first episode of Imposter Syndrome.
Yes.
Yep. Yes. And 1 or 2 after that. 2, I think. But yeah, you guys are awesome. I really appreciate you all. Thank you for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful week. I hope you are reading some 5-star reads, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, everybody.